The bridge of the horizon's promise hummed with quiet efficiency as Captain Jiang reviewed the final preparations for first contact. Outside the viewports, a massive structure of the Galactic Council Station hung against the stars like a jeweled crown. Humanity had waited 2 centuries for this moment, ever since their first faster-than-light drive had carried them beyond their solar system. Now they would finally meet the civilizations that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Ji Young smoothed her dress uniform one last time and nodded to her communications officer. The message had been sent 3 days ago, announcing humanity's peaceful intentions and requesting formal diplomatic relations. The Council's response had been brief and cold, but it was a response. That was enough. The docking procedure went smoothly. Jiang led her small delegation through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. The ceilings soared impossibly high, and the architecture spoke of ancient power and unchallenged authority. Ambassador Minho walked beside her, his face carefully neutral despite the obvious intimidation tactics. The council chamber was even more impressive and more deliberately overwhelming. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species filled tiered seating that rose into shadows above. At the center sat the 5 supreme counselors, each representing one of the ancient founding civilizations. Their expressions ranged from bored to openly contemptuous. Minho stepped forward and began his prepared speech. He spoke of humanity's desire for peace, their willingness to learn from older civilizations, and their hope to contribute to galactic society. He outlined Earth's technological achievements, their cultural diversity, and their commitment to the principles that seemed to guide the Council itself. The speech was met with silence. Then, from the highest tier, someone laughed. Supreme Counselor Vren of the Vrex Empire rose from his seat. He was massive, easily twice the height of any human, with blue-gray skin and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Another primitive species from the outer rim," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "How many is that this century? 20? 30? They all come here with the same speech about peace and friendship. They all think they have something valuable to offer." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jiang felt her jaw tighten, but kept her expression calm. Minho, to his credit, simply waited. "You wish to join our council?" Vren continued. "Then you must first prove yourselves worthy. You must demonstrate your submission to our authority and your understanding of your proper place in the galactic order." "With respect," Minho replied carefully. "Humanity seeks partnership, not submission. We believe in cooperation between equals." The laughter that followed was louder this time. Vren's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Equals?" He repeated. "You have been in space for barely 200 of your years. We have been building this civilization for 20,000. You have explored perhaps 50 star systems. We control 50,000. And you speak of equality?" "We speak of mutual respect," Jiang interjected, unable to stay silent any longer. "We may be younger, but that doesn't make us lesser. Every species in this chamber was once new to the stars." Vren's expression shifted from contempt to something darker. "You dare to lecture us? To question our judgment?" He leaned forward, his massive hands gripping the railing before him. "Perhaps you need a lesson in humility. Perhaps you need to understand what happens to those who do not show proper respect to their betters." The threat hung in the air like poison. Minho raised his hand in a placating gesture. "We mean no disrespect. We simply ask for the opportunity to prove ourselves as friends and allies." "You will prove yourselves," Vren said coldly, "or you will learn what it means to defy the Council. This session is concluded. You have one standard cycle to consider your position. Return then with a more appropriate attitude, or do not return at all." The dismissal was absolute. Jiang and Minho had no choice but to withdraw. As they made their way back to their ship, neither spoke. The humiliation burned, but more troubling was the undercurrent of genuine threat in Vren's words. They were halfway back to human space when the message came through. The colony transport Gentle Dawn had been destroyed. All 3,000 colonists aboard were dead. The weapon signature matched Vrek's technology. Ji-Yong stared at the report with hands that trembled with rage. The Gentle Dawn had been a civilian vessel, unarmed and clearly marked. It had been carrying families, children, scientists, and teachers heading to humanity's newest settlement. And the Vreks had destroyed it like it was nothing. The attached message was brief, a demonstration of Council authority. Choose wisely. She immediately contacted Earth Command. The conversation was tense and filled with barely suppressed fury. Admiral Dayan's face on the screen was carved from stone, but her eyes burned with the same anger Ji-Yong felt. They're testing us, Dayan said. They think we're weak. They think one show of force will make us roll over and submit. What are our orders? Ji-Yong asked, though she dreaded the answer. Part of her wanted to turn every weapon her ship possessed on the nearest Vrex vessel. Part of her knew that was exactly what they were hoping for, an excuse to label humanity as aggressors. Return to Council Station, Dayan ordered. Ambassador Minho will deliver a formal response. We're going to give them one chance to make this right. 3 days later, Minho stood before the Council again. This time, there was no prepared speech about peace and friendship. This time, his voice was hard as steel. 3,000 human civilians are dead, he said, murdered by Vrex forces in an unprovoked attack on an unarmed transport vessel. This is not how civilized species behave. This is not the action of beings worthy of the authority you claim. Vren smiled, showing too many teeth. It was a warning, a gentle reminder of the consequences of arrogance. Then hear our warning, Minho replied. Humanity will not submit to threats. We will not bow to bullies. We came here seeking peace, and we still prefer it. But if you continue on this path, if you continue to attack our people, you will discover that humanity can be very dangerous when provoked. Is that a threat? Vren asked, sounding almost amused. It's a warning, Minho said quietly. The only one you'll receive? We have protocols for situations like this. Rules of engagement that have been carefully developed over centuries of hard lessons. Right now, we're operating under peacetime protocols. We're showing restraint. We're being civilized. But those protocols can change. Those restraints can be removed. He paused, letting his words sink in. So here is humanity's position. Cease all hostile actions against our people immediately. Provide reparations for the lives you've taken. Do this, and we can still find a path to peaceful coexistence. Refuse, and you will learn exactly how dangerous we can be. The council chamber erupted in outraged noise. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia did not receive ultimatums from newcomers. Vren's face darkened with rage. You think you can threaten us? He roared. You think your tiny fleet and primitive weapons frighten the Vrex Empire? We have crushed species far more advanced than you. We will teach you the meaning of power. Ji-Yong watched from the observation gallery as Minho turned and walked away without another word. The warning had been delivered. Whether the council chose to heed, it was their decision. She just hoped they chose wisely. Because she had seen the classified files. She knew what humanity was capable of when the courtesy act ended. And she knew that the Vrex Empire had no idea what they were provoking. The Horizons. Promise departed Council Station 12 hours later. Behind them, the Vrex were already mobilizing their forces, confident in their superiority and their right to punish those who dared to challenge them. They believed they were preparing for a quick and easy victory. They had no idea They were walking toward the edge of an abyss. The attacks came exactly 1 week after humanity's warning to the Council. 3 human outposts in neutral space, each one a small research station studying local stellar phenomena, were hit simultaneously by Vrex strike forces. The attacks were broadcast across Council networks, with commentary describing them as entertainment. A display of Vrex military superiority over the upstart humans. Commander Hyun-woo received the distress calls aboard his flagship, Resolute Justice, while conducting routine patrol exercises near the border of human space. His crew watched in stunned silence as the footage played across their screens. The Vrex warships had taken their time with the destruction, making sure their weapons carved through the stations, slowly enough for everyone inside to know what was happening. 1,200 people were dead. Scientists, engineers, support staff. Most of them hadn't even been military personnel. They were researchers who had volunteered to spend years in isolation, studying the mysteries of the universe. And the Vrex had killed them for sport. Hyun-woo's knuckles went white as he gripped the arms of his command chair. His second officer, Lieutenant Borum, pulled up the tactical data. The Vrex strike force was still in the area, probably expecting some kind of response. Their ships hung in space near the debris of the destroyed, outposts like predators, waiting to see if anything would dare to challenge them. "Orders from Earth Command are coming through," Borum reported. Her voice carefully controlled. Hyun-woo read them twice to make sure he understood correctly. Then he read them a third time. Finally, he looked up at his crew. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. "But listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Our rules of engagement are very specific. We are authorized to engage and neutralize the Vrex forces, but we are to minimize casualties. Disable their ships. Strip their weapons and engines. Leave them alive but helpless." His tactical officer frowned. "Sir, they just killed 1,200 of our people." "I know," Hyun-woo replied quietly, "and I want nothing more than to make them pay for it. But we're following orders. We're going to show them exactly how badly they miscalculated, and we're going to do it without dropping to their level." "Not yet." Not yet. The Resolute Justice and its escort ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly on top of the Vrex position. The aliens were clearly surprised. Their formation was loose and overconfident. They had expected either no response at all, or perhaps a desperate, emotional attack they could easily crush. What they got instead was precision warfare, the likes of which they had never encountered. Hyun-woo's ships moved with coordinated grace, their combat AI systems analyzing and predicting every possible Vrex maneuver before it happened. When the Vrex opened fire, their weapons splashed harmlessly against shields that seemed impossibly strong for ships of that size. Then the humans returned. Fire, the weapons Earth had developed, were based on principles the Vrex had never even theorized about. Electromagnetic pulse cannons that didn't destroy ships, but instead fried every electronic system they touched. Precision particle beams that carved through specific sections of hull plating without causing catastrophic damage. Magnetic grappler fields that locked onto Vrex vessels and held them in place like insects in amber. Within 15 minutes, 8 Vrex warships hung dead in space. Their weapons were gone, sliced away by surgical strikes. Their engines were disabled, shut down by electromagnetic pulses that left the crew alive but the ship helpless. Their shields were collapsed, drained by sustained bombardment that never once targeted the crew sections. Not a single Vrex had died. Hyun-woo opened a communication channel to the disabled ships. His face appeared on their screens, calm and controlled, despite the rage he felt inside. "This is Commander Hyun-woo of the Human Defense Fleet," he said. "Your ships have been disabled. Your weapons are gone. You are alive because we chose to let you live. We could have destroyed you. We could have killed every single one of you in the time it took to disable your vessels. We didn't." He paused, letting that sink in. "You killed 1,200 of our people today. You broadcast it like it was a game. You thought we were weak because we asked for peace. You thought we would either submit or die trying to fight back. You were wrong." On the screens, he could see Vrex crew members staring back at him with expressions ranging from shock to fear. They were beginning to understand. "This is humanity's second warning," Jinwo continued. "We don't want war. We still prefer peace. But if you continue to attack us, if you continue to kill our people, we will respond. And next time, we might not be so merciful. Take this message back to your empire. Make sure they understand what happened here today." He cut the transmission and ordered his ships to withdraw. Behind them, the disabled Vrex vessels drifted in space. Recovery ships would reach them eventually, and the crews would be returned home alive, but forever changed by what they had experienced. The footage of the battle spread through council networks even faster than the Vrex propaganda had. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers suddenly found themselves re-evaluating. The technology the humans had displayed was far beyond what their age should have allowed. The tactics were brutally efficient. And most disturbing of all, the restraint they had shown suggested they were holding back even more. Dr. Yunji, Earth's chief xenopsychologist, watched the Council's response from her office in Geneva. She had been studying alien psychology for 15 years, preparing for the day humanity would join galactic society. Now she found herself terrified by what she was seeing. The problem wasn't that the aliens understood the message. The problem was that they were misinterpreting it. She pulled up communication records from various council species, monitoring the chatter that intelligence satellites had intercepted. The consensus forming among many species was exactly what she had feared. They saw humanity's refusal to kill as weakness, not strength. They believed that any species that wouldn't take lives when they had the chance was ultimately too soft to win a real war. The Vrex Empire in particular was spinning the battle as a victory of sorts. Yes, they had lost ships, but not a single warrior had died. Clearly, the humans were bound by some cultural taboo against killing. They would disable and humiliate, but they wouldn't destroy. That made them predictable. That made them manageable. EUNG tried to explain to anyone who would listen. She sent reports to the Council. She gave interviews to alien news networks. She detailed Earth's history of warfare, the centuries of conflict that had taught humanity exactly how destructive they could be, and why restraint was necessary. Most aliens didn't believe her. The ones who did were ignored by those in power. The Vrex High Command met to discuss their response. Supreme General Thrak reviewed the battle data with his advisors. They analyzed the human weapons, their tactics, their capabilities, and they came to a conclusion that would prove catastrophic. "They're strong," Thrak admitted, "stronger than we anticipated, but they have a fatal weakness. They won't kill. Some primitive moral code holds them back. We can use that." His intelligence officer pulled up projections. "Our analysis suggests that with overwhelming numbers, we can simply absorb their attacks. They'll disable our ships, but our crews will survive. Eventually, they'll run out of resources, or their soft hearts will break and they'll surrender." Thrak nodded slowly. "Then we'll give them overwhelming numbers. We'll take this fight to their home system. We'll force them to either submit or watch their planet burn. And when they realize they can't win without becoming the monsters they fear, they'll surrender." Orders went out across the Vrex Empire. 500 warships began to mobilize, the largest fleet assembled in 50 years. They would jump to Earth's solar system, bypass the outer colonies, and strike directly at humanity's heart. It would be a show of force so massive that no amount of clever technology or tactical skill could overcome it. The Vrex were certain of victory. They had learned from their defeat. They understood humanity's capabilities now. They knew the humans' weakness. They were absolutely, catastrophically wrong. Back on Earth, Admiral Dayon received intelligence reports about the gathering Vrex fleet. She sat in her office, staring at the numbers. 500 ships. Maybe 30,000 crew members. All of them coming to attack Earth directly. She opened her secure terminal and began entering authorization codes. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, ancient weapon systems that had been dormant for decades began to wake up. Orbital platforms around Earth received updated targeting parameters. Ships that had been held in reserve for the worst-case scenario were brought to full operational status. EUN thought about Commander Hyan Wu's mercy. She thought about the 1,200 people who had died in the Vrex attacks. She thought about the 3,000 colonists from the Gentle Dawn. And she thought about what was about to happen when the Vrex fleet arrived, expecting humans to play. Nice. She sent one final message to the Council, marked urgent and delivered to every member species. Humanity has shown restraint. We have given warnings. We have demonstrated our capability while sparing lives. The Vrex Empire has chosen to interpret our mercy as weakness. They are mobilizing a massive fleet to attack Earth directly. This is humanity's third and final warning. If that fleet enters our solar system, we will no longer limit our response. The Courtesy Act will end. We urge the Council to convince the Vrex to reconsider while there is still time. The message was read and dismissed by most recipients. The Vrex Empire never even bothered to respond. Their fleet was already on its way. The Vrex invasion fleet emerged from faster than light. Travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Exactly when their intelligence predicted would be optimal. 500 warships. Spread across a formation so vast it could be seen from the surface of Pluto. Supreme General Thrak stood on the bridge of his flagship Inevitable Conquest and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. No species could stand against such overwhelming force. The human response came immediately, but it wasn't weapons fire. It was a transmission. Admiral Dayon appeared on screens across the Vrex fleet. She wore her full dress uniform, every medal and ribbon perfectly placed. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful, which somehow made her more intimidating than if she had been angry. "Supreme General Thrak," she said, her voice carrying across space. "I am Admiral Dayon, commander of Earth's Solar Defense Force. You have brought 500 warships to our home. You intend to attack our planet. Before you proceed, I want you to understand exactly what you're doing." Thrak frowned but gestured for his crew to maintain silence. Let the human have her final desperate plea. "You've attacked our outposts," Dayon continued. "You've killed our civilians. You've interpreted our restraint as weakness. That was a mistake, but it's one you can still walk away from. What I'm about to show you is not a threat. It's not psychological warfare. It's simply information. Facts about who we are and what we're capable of." The transmission shifted. Historical footage began to play. The Vrex crew watched scenes from Earth's world wars. Millions of soldiers charging across fields into machine gun fire. Cities reduced to rubble by sustained bombing campaigns. Nuclear weapons detonating over population centers, turning thriving metropolises into shadows and ash in microseconds. Chemical weapons choking soldiers in trenches. Firebombing that created hurricanes of flame that consumed everything in their path. This is what humans do to each other. Dayon's voice narrated over the images. This is how we fight when we believe our survival is at stake. We developed these weapons. We used them. We watched our own cities burn and our own people die, and we kept fighting. The footage continued. Orbital bombardment tests. showing asteroids redirected to impact uninhabited moons with the force of dinosaur-killing impacts. Antimatter containment facilities, demonstrating the careful process of creating and storing the most destructive substance in the universe. Biological warfare research, creating diseases so lethal they had to be studied in sealed facilities in orbit because Earth itself was too risky. After our last global war, we made a choice, Dayon said. We decided that these weapons were too terrible to use. We developed rules of engagement. We created protocols for proportional response. We chose restraint. Not because we're weak, but because we're strong enough to control ourselves. The transmission shifted again, this time showing technical specifications. Weapon systems the Vrex had never imagined. Quantum disruptor beams that could tear apart the bonds holding atoms together. Nanite swarms capable of disassembling a ship down to its component molecules while leaving the crew alive to suffocate in space. Gravity weapons that could create localized SINGULAR, ITIEs. And finally, the planet crackers. Devices capable of destabilizing a world's core, turning a living planet into an expanding cloud of debris. We developed these weapons during our darkest period, Dayon explained, when we thought we might face enemies that would force us to use them. Then we swore never to deploy them unless our species faced extinction. They've been in storage for 80 years. Every human military officer has to watch footage of what they can do as part of their training. It's meant to remind us why restraint matters. She paused, letting the implications sink in. You've been fighting us with peacetime rules of engagement. We've been pulling our punches. We disabled your ships instead of destroying them. We spared your crews. We showed you mercy because that's what civilized beings do. We tried to be better than our history. The footage ended. Dayon's face filled the screens again. This is humanity's third and final warning. Turn your fleet around and leave our solar system. Do this within the next 12 hours, and we will consider this incident closed. We'll even continue diplomatic talks if you wish. But if you cross the asteroid belt, if you proceed with your attack, we will no longer operate under peacetime protocols. We will stop pulling our punches. We will show you what humans are truly capable of when we drop the courtesy act. She leaned forward slightly. You have 1,200 hours to decide. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, silence stretched for nearly a minute. Thrak's tactical officers exchanged uncertain glances. His intelligence advisor pulled up analysis of what they had just seen. Opinion? Thrak demanded. His chief strategist spoke carefully. Some of the footage is clearly historical and genuine. The nuclear weapons match our records of human technology. But the more advanced systems, the antimatter weapons and quantum technology, that seems impossible for a species their age. Propaganda, Thrak concluded. Psychological warfare designed to frighten us. They're showing us theoretical weapons, research projects, maybe even computer simulations. They're hoping we'll believe they have capabilities they don't actually possess. His weapons officer nodded. The physical principles behind some of those systems are sound, but the engineering required would take centuries to develop. No species advances that quickly. Exactly, Thrak agreed. He pulled up the specifications they had on human ships. Strong shields, effective weapons, good tactics, but nothing that suggested the kind of overwhelming technological superiority the transmission implied. They're bluffing. They know they can't win, so they're trying to scare us away. His intelligence advisor wasn't so certain. Sir, with respect, they did provide very detailed technical data, and their history of warfare is concerning. They clearly have experience with total war concepts. Every species has a violent past, Thrak dismissed. What matters is present capability, not historical documentation. They showed us mercy before, because they had to, Not because they chose to. They simply don't have the firepower to destroy a fleet this size. On the lunar surface, in a facility buried beneath 300 meters of rock and regolith, Engineer Borum worked through the activation sequence for weapons that hadn't been powered up in decades. Her hands moved automatically through the procedures she had drilled 1,000 times, but never expected to use. Tears ran down her face as she worked. She had joined the military to protect people, to defend Earth from potential threats. She had never imagined she would be the one to activate systems designed for wholesale slaughter. Primary antimatter warheads armed, she reported, her voice flat and professional despite her emotions. Quantum disruptor arrays charging. Nanite swarm carriers ready for deployment. Her commanding officer's voice came through her earpiece. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, sir," Borum lead. "Just following procedures?" "You know this might not happen," he said gently. "They still have 12 hours. They might turn around." Borum looked at her monitors, showing the Vrex fleet holding position at the edge of the solar system. "No, sir, I don't think they will. I think they believe we're bluffing. Then we'll show them we're not." Aboard the Horizon's Promise, Captain Jiang monitored communications across all channels. She could hear the chatter within the Vrex fleet, their certainty that humanity was engaged in psychological warfare. She could hear the confidence in their voices as they discussed how they would force Earth's surrender. She opened a private channel to Ambassador Minho. "They're not going to back down." "I know," Minho replied quietly. "They've convinced themselves we're weak. Nothing we say will change their minds. They have to learn the hard way." 4,200 people are about to die, Jiang said. "The crews of those ships. Most of them are probably just following orders." "I know," Minho repeated. "And I hate it. But they had 3 chances. We warned them. We demonstrated our capability. We showed them historical evidence of what we're capable of. They chose not to believe us." Jiang closed her eyes. She thought about the 3,000 colonists on the Gentle Dawn, the 1,200 researchers at the outposts, all the other humans who had died because the Vrex thought they could bully humanity into submission. "May God forgive us for what's about to happen," she whispered. "God doesn't need to forgive us," Minho replied. "We gave them every possible chance. What happens next is their choice, not ours." The 12 hours ticked down. Multiple times, Earth Command sent additional messages to the Vrex fleet, offering them opportunities to withdraw with honor. Each message was ignored or mocked. With 2 hours remaining, Dr. Yunji made one final attempt. She contacted the Council directly, bypassing diplomatic channels, to speak to anyone who would listen. "Please," she begged. "Someone has to make them understand. Humanity isn't bluffing. Our restraint isn't weakness. It's control. If they cross that line, we will respond with everything we have. Thousands of people are going to die." A junior counselor from a minor species responded. "What can we do? The Vrex have made their decision. They don't believe your warnings." "Then show them our history," Yunji pleaded. "Make them understand what kind of species we are. We climbed to the top of our food chain by being the most dangerous predators on our planet. Then we turned that violence on each other for thousands of years. We learned to make war into a science. And now they're about to force us to use that knowledge on them." "I will try," the counselor promised, but Yunji could hear the doubt in their voice. They both knew it was too late. With 1 hour remaining, Supreme General Thrak made his final decision. He broadcast to his entire fleet. "The humans have had their chance to surrender. They've wasted it on empty threats and propaganda. We proceed as planned. All ships prepare to cross the asteroid belt. Destination, Earth. We will show these primitives what real power looks like." The 500 warships of the Vrex invasion fleet began moving forward in perfect formation. On Earth, alarms began to sound. Every military installation went to full alert. Civilian populations were moved to deep shelters. Emergency protocols that had been drilled but never implemented went into effect. Admiral Dayan sat in her command center, watching the Vrex fleet advance. She had hoped, desperately, that they would turn back, that someone in their leadership would have the wisdom to recognize they were making a terrible mistake. But hope wasn't a strategy, and the time for warnings had passed. She entered her final authorization code. Across the solar system, weapon systems came online. Ships that had been waiting in reserve dropped their stealth protocols. Orbital platforms rotated to firing positions. The Vrex fleet crossed the asteroid belt. And humanity dropped the Courtesy Act. The first strike came from places the Vrex didn't know existed. Captain Junho's stealth destroyer squadron had been holding position in the outer system for 3 days. Their ships wrapped in sensor-dampening fields that made them invisible to conventional detection. They had watched the Vrex fleet arrive, watched the warnings be ignored, and waited for the inevitable. When the Vrex crossed the asteroid belt, Junho gave the order his crew had been dreading. All ships weapons-free. Execute Plan Ragnarok. His 6 destroyers dropped their stealth fields and materialized inside the Vrex formation, peering in the spaces between their ships where no defenses were oriented. Before the Vrex could even begin to react, the antimatter warheads launched. Each warhead contained barely a gram of antimatter suspended in magnetic containment. Each one released the energy of a small star when it detonated. The explosions lit up space like newborn suns. Vrex cruisers simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that there wasn't even debris left behind. The shields they had relied on, designed to stop conventional weapons, might as well have been made of paper. The armor plating that had withstood battles against dozens of species melted like ice under a blowtorch. 40-7 Vrex. Warships died in the first 30 seconds. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, Supreme General Frack stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Entire sections of his fleet were gone, replaced by expanding spheres of superheated gas. His sensors were screaming alerts, but they made no sense. The energy signatures were impossible. Nothing could hit that hard. All ships return fire. He roared. Target those destroyers. The Vrex fleet tried to respond, but Junho's ships were already moving. They had jumped into the formation, delivered their payload, and were now accelerating away at speeds the Vrex couldn't match. A few shots clipped their shields, but nothing connected solidly enough to do damage. Then the second wave hit. Commander Sujin's dreadnought, Inevitable, emerged from behind Jupiter's moon Io, where it had been hiding in the electromagnetic noise of the gas giant's radiation belt. It was massive, easily twice the size of the largest Vrex battleship, and it had been built for exactly one purpose: overwhelming firepower. The directed energy weapons mounted along its hull were marvels of human engineering. They accelerated particles to a significant fraction of light, speed and focused them into beams so concentrated they could cut through anything. When Sujin gave the order to fire, space itself seemed to tear apart. The beams were invisible until they hit their targets. Then Vrex capital ships began to split in half. The cuts were perfectly clean, surgical in their precision. Shields didn't slow the beams down. Armor provided no protection. The beams simply passed through everything like it wasn't there. A Vrex dreadnought broke apart into 3 pieces, its internal atmosphere venting into space as emergency bulkheads tried and failed to seal sections that no longer existed. A carrier split down the middle, its fighter bays exposed to vacuum. A battleship lost its entire forward section. The crew compartments suddenly opened to the void. "Keep firing," Sujin ordered calmly, though her hands were clenched white on her command console. "Target capital ships first." Leave the escorts for the Nanite swarms. AI officer Minseok sat in his sealed control room, interfacing directly with the Nanite swarm control network. The microscopic machines had been dispersed throughout the combat zone hours ago, invisible and inert. Waiting for activation. Now they woke up. The swarms moved through space like living clouds. Billions of machines, each smaller than a grain of sand. They had been programmed with one instruction: disassemble wreck ships. They would distinguish between living tissue and construction materials, carefully avoiding the crews while destroying everything else. Wrecks, escort ships, suddenly found their hull plating dissolving around them. The nanites worked with terrifying efficiency, breaking molecular bonds and sorting atoms into neat streams. Weapon systems fell apart. Engine sections came undone. Life support components separated into their constituent elements. The Vrex crews watched in horror as their ships disintegrated around them. Emergency protocols activated, sealing them into life pods that the nanites were programmed to ignore. They floated in space, alive but helpless, surrounded by the neatly sorted atoms that had once been their vessels. Minseok felt sick as he watched his displays. The nanites were working exactly as designed. They were horrifyingly effective. He had helped program them, but seeing them in action made him want to vomit. 53 ships disabled, he reported mechanically. Crews are in life pods. No casualties. Acknowledged, Admiral Dayan replied from Earth Command. Continue current operations. The Vrex fleet was in complete chaos. Supreme General Thrax's tactical officers were screening contradictory reports. His communications channels were filled with desperate calls for help, for orders, for anything that made sense of what was happening. Return fire. Thrax ordered again. All ships concentrate fire on that dreadnought. Nearly 300 Vrex warships turned their weapons on the inevitable. For a moment, it looked like they might succeed through sheer volume of fire. Energy beams and missiles converged on Sujin's ship from every direction. The inevitable shields held. The ship had been designed specifically to withstand massed fire from multiple opponents. Its shield generators drew power directly from an antimatter reactor that could output more energy than most stations. The Vrex weapons splashed against the shields like rain against a window, and the inevitable kept firing. More Vrex ships split apart. More sections of the fleet dissolved under nanite swarms. More antimatter warheads detonated among the tight formations, each one taking out multiple targets. Engineer Borum, watching from her station on Luna, felt tears running down her face as she directed fire from the orbital platforms. Each pull of the trigger sent death streaking across space. Each shot ended lives. She had joined the military to protect people, and now she was killing them by the dozens. But she kept firing, because those ships had come to attack Earth, because they had been warned. Because this was what happened when humanity's restraint finally broke. Platform 7 reporting all magazines depleted, her assistant called out. Reloading now. Platform 12 has a firing solution on that carrier group, another voice reported. Authorized, Borum said quietly. Execute. The battle lasted 12 minutes from first shot to last. When it ended, 493 Vrex warships were destroyed completely. Just wreckage and expanding clouds of vapor. Another 53 had been disabled by the nanite swarms. Their crews alive in life pods, but their vessels reduced to sorted piles of atoms. 7 ships remained intact. Admiral Dayan had given specific orders that 7 ships were to be left functional but disabled. Their weapons were destroyed. Their engines were offline. But their crews were alive and their sensor logs were intact. Captain Jiang's Horizon's Promise approached one of the disabled vessels. She opened a communication channel to its bridge. The Vrex crew stared back at her from the screen. They looked terrified. These were soldiers who had been confident of victory 12 minutes ago. Now they had watched their entire fleet destroyed in less time than it took to eat a meal. "This is Captain Jiang," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. "Your ship has been disabled. Your fleet has been destroyed. You are alive because we chose to let you live." She paused, making sure they were listening. "You will be recovered by your Empire's ships. Your sensor logs will show exactly what happened here. Make sure your leaders see them. Make sure they understand." Another pause. This was humanity with the courtesy act dropped. This was us fighting without restraint. We gave you 3 warnings. We demonstrated our capability. We begged you to turn back. You chose to ignore us. This is the consequence of that choice. Jiang felt exhausted suddenly, drained by the weight of what had just happened. The Galactic Council will receive full documentation of this engagement. They will see that we defended our home after multiple warnings and provocations. They will see that we showed mercy to survivors even now. But make no mistake, any further aggression against humanity or our interests will be met with the same response. She leaned forward. "We don't want to be the monsters you forced us to become today. We wanted peace. We still want peace. But we will never again allow anyone to mistake our desire for peace as weakness. We will never again pull our punches when our people are threatened. This is who we are when you push us too far." The transmission ended. Jiang slumped in her command chair, suddenly aware that she was shaking. Ambassador Minho's voice came through her private channel. "Are you all right?" "No," she admitted. "I don't think I'll ever be all right again. We just killed thousands of people in 12 minutes. They came here to kill billions," Minho replied gently. "We gave them every chance. This isn't on us." "I know," Jiang said, "but knowing that doesn't make it easier." Throughout the solar system, human ships began the grim task of recovery operations. Vrex life pods were collected, and the survivors were provided with basic supplies. Medical teams treated the injured. Counselors were made available because many of the Vrex crew members were in shock. Engineer Borum sat in her quarters after her shift ended and cried for an hour. She had killed more people today than she could count. The fact that they had been enemies, that they had come to attack Earth, that she had been following orders, none of it made the weight any lighter. Commander Sujin ordered her crew to paint no victory marks on the Inevitable's hull. There was no glory in what they had done, no honor in the slaughter, even if it had been necessary. I Officer Min Seok submitted his resignation. It was denied, but he was granted extended leave for psychological counseling. Captain Juno gathered his squadron, and they held a memorial service for the people they had killed, even though regulations didn't require it. Across the human fleet, the mood was somber. They had won. Earth was safe. The threat was eliminated. But the cost to their souls felt almost as heavy as the cost in enemy lives. "Admiral," Diane addressed the fleet from her command center. "What happened today was terrible. What we did was terrible. But it was also necessary. We gave every warning we could. We showed restraint until restraint became impossible. We defended our home and our people." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "We are not monsters. We are people who are forced to do monstrous things. Remember that. Remember why we tried so hard to avoid this. And remember that we never want to do this again." The sensor logs from the 7 surviving Vrex ships began their journey back to the Vrex home world. With them went the complete, unedited footage of the 12-minute war. Every species in the Council would see exactly what happened when humanity stopped being polite. The galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson about the difference between restraint and weakness. The emergency session of the Galactic Council, convened 3 days after what was already being called the 12-minute war. Every major species had representatives present. The chamber was packed beyond capacity, with thousands more watching via broadcast across council space. Supreme General Thrak stood in the center of the chamber, looking nothing like the confident warrior who had led 500 ships to Earth. His uniform was scorched in places, and his eyes held a haunted quality that everyone recognized. He had seen something that broke him. "Tell the council what happened," Supreme Counselor Vren ordered. His voice was cold, but there was an undercurrent of fear in it. Thrak's voice was barely above a whisper. "They destroyed us. In 12 minutes, they destroyed almost our entire fleet. 493 ships. Tens of thousands of crew members. On." He pulled up the sensor logs on the chamber's main display. The council watched in absolute silence as the footage played. The antimatter detonations that vaporized ships instantly. The particle beams that sliced through vessels like they were made of nothing. The nanite swarms that disassembled ships while carefully preserving the crews. "We fought back," Thrak continued. 300 ships concentrated fire on their largest vessel. We hit it with everything we had. Their shields didn't even flicker. Then they cut our fleet apart like we were children playing with toys. A junior counselor from a species humanity had never met raised a tentacle. "How is this possible?" Our intelligence said the humans were advanced, but not overwhelmingly so. This technology is centuries beyond what they should possess. Thrak laughed bitterly. "We thought the same thing. We thought they were bluffing when they showed us their capabilities. We thought their restraint meant they were weak." He looked around the chamber. "We were wrong. About everything." Dr. Yunji had been invited to address the council. She stood and waited for permission to speak. When it was granted, she activated her own display showing Earth's history. "You made the same mistake countless species have made when dealing with humans," she said. "You assumed that reluctance to kill meant inability to kill. You saw our mercy and thought it was weakness." She pulled up images of Earth. "My species evolved on a death world. Our planet tried to kill us with predators, diseases, disasters, and climate extremes. We survived by becoming better predators than anything else on our world. We didn't have claws or fangs, so we made weapons. We didn't have armor, so we made tools. We learned to cooperate in groups to take down prey much larger and stronger than ourselves." The display shifted to human history. Wars, weapons, destruction. Then we turned those survival skills on each other. For thousands of years, we refined the art of killing our own kind. We studied warfare like it was a science. We developed weapons that could end our entire species. And we used them. She let that sink in. After our last global war, we made a choice. We decided that we were too good at killing. That if we didn't control ourselves, we would destroy our own civilization. So we developed rules, protocols. We chose restraint. But restraint requires two parties, she continued. It requires that the other side respects the effort being made. When you attacked our civilians, you showed us that you didn't respect our restraint. You saw it as weakness to be exploited. So we stopped holding back." Vren stood, his face twisted with rage. "You dare to lecture us? Your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries, and you think you can dictate terms to the council?" "I'm not dictating anything," Yunji replied calmly. "I'm explaining what happened and why. You can accept it or not. That's your choice." Ambassador Minho stepped forward then. Unlike the last time he had addressed the council, there was no attempt at diplomacy or politeness in his bearing. He stood like a man who had nothing left to prove. "Humanity is done asking for permission to exist," he said flatly. "We tried to join your council as friends. We showed you respect. We followed your protocols. And you attacked us? You killed our people. You came to our home with 500 warships, planning to force our surrender or destroy our planet. He gestured to the sensor logs still playing on the displays. You see what happened when we stopped being polite. That wasn't even our full capability. We have weapons we didn't use, ships we didn't deploy, technologies we held in reserve. What you saw was humanity fighting with restraint removed, but still fighting defensively in our own system. The implication hung heavy in the chamber. If humanity could do that while defending, what could they do on the attack? Here are our terms, Minho continued. Humanity will be recognized as a sovereign power with full rights and protections under Council law. The Vrex Empire will pay reparations for the civilians they murdered. Any species that attacks human ships, colonies, or interests will face immediate and unlimited retaliation. We will not warn them. We will not show mercy. We will not hold back. Friend's face went purple with rage. You cannot make demands of this council. We have existed for 20,000 years. We have crushed species far more advanced than you. No, Minho said quietly. You've crushed species that were more advanced in some ways, but still fought by rules you understood. You've never faced a species that learned warfare from necessity, that studied killing as an art form, that developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum destruction. He pulled up a new display showing additional human weapon systems, things that hadn't been used in the battle, biological agents that could sterilize planets, robots that could self-replicate and consume resources, turning entire worlds into production facilities, weapons that could destabilize stars. We built these things because we were afraid of what we might face in the galaxy, Minho explained. We built them because our history taught us to prepare for the worst. We have never used them. We hope we never have to. But they exist. And now you know they exist. Captain Jiang stood beside Minho. Her voice was softer, but carried just as much weight. We don't want to be your enemies. We wanted to be your friends. But you've made it clear that friendship isn't possible. So instead, we'll settle for respect through fear. You'll leave us alone because you're afraid of what we'll do if you don't. The council chamber erupted in angry debate. Species that had allied with the Vrex demanded retaliation. Others called for caution. A few suggested simply quarantining human space and avoiding contact entirely. And a small voice cut through the chaos. Councillor Tanis, representing a minor species that had never spoken much in council sessions, activated her microphone. I have a question for the human delegation, she said. If we agree to your terms, if we recognize your sovereignty and leave you alone, will you help us? The chamber went silent. Minho frowned. Help you how? The Krell hegemony has been raiding my people's worlds for decades, Tanis explained. We've appealed to the council countless times. Nothing ever changes. The Krell are strong, and we are weak, so they take what they want from us. If humanity's strength can protect you from the Vrex, could it protect us from the Krell? It was a clever move, and Minho recognized it immediately. Tanis was offering humanity a chance to be more than just feared. She was offering them a chance to be respected as protectors, not just as threats. If the council agrees to our terms, Minho said carefully, and if your people request our assistance through proper diplomatic channels, we would be willing to discuss a defensive alliance. Within an hour, 17 other minor species had made similar requests. Species that had been suffering under the dominance of larger, more aggressive civilizations suddenly saw an opportunity. Humanity had proven they could stand up to bullies. Maybe they could stand up to other bullies too. The vote on humanity's demands took 3 days of debate. In the end, it passed with 73% support. The species that voted against it were primarily those allied with the Vrex, or those who feared what humanity's presence would mean for the existing power, structure, But the vote didn't really matter. Everyone in the chamber knew the truth. Humanity didn't need the council's permission. They were powerful enough to exist on their own terms. The vote was just a formality, a way for the council to pretend they still had authority. The Vrex Empire was ordered to pay massive reparations. Initially, Vren refused. Then humanity began moving fleets toward Vrex space. The reparations were paid within a week. Over the following months, defensive treaties were signed with 23 minor species. Human ships began patrolling their space, protecting them from raiders and aggressors. The protected species called them guardians. The raiders called them something else entirely, usually right before their ships were disabled and their crews were sent home, alive but thoroughly humiliated. 1 year after the 12-minute war, Ambassador Mino stood on the observation deck of the new human embassy station in council space. It was massive, more fortress than diplomatic outpost, and it made a clear statement. Humanity was here to stay. Young Officer Tai Yang joined him at the viewport. "Do you think we did the right thing, sir?" Minho considered the question. "We did what we had to do. The Vrex gave us no choice. But we changed the galaxy," Tai Yang said. "We forced them to respect us through fear." "Better feared than dead," Minho replied. "Better to be the species everyone is afraid to attack than the species that trusted in goodwill and got exterminated for it." He gestured to the displays showing the council station. "Look at them. They're more careful now. They think twice before attacking anyone because they don't know who might have a defensive treaty with us. Pirates are choosing different professions. Raiders are finding legitimate work. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than it was? Yes. At what cost?" Tai Yang asked quietly. 4,227 Vrex crew members died when we defended our home, Minho said. "We'll carry that weight forever. But if we hadn't fought back, billions of humans would have died. The Vrex would have attacked our planet. And after they succeeded, how many other species would they have attacked, emboldened by their victory?" He turned to face Tai Yang directly. "We gave them 3 warnings. We showed them our capabilities. We begged them to turn back. They chose to ignore us. What happened after that was their choice, not ours." On Earth, Admiral Dayon stood in a memorial garden dedicated to the civilians who had died in the Vrex attacks. 4,200 names were inscribed on a wall of black stone. "She came here every week." Engineer Borum stood beside her. "Do you think they'll attack again?" she asked. "No," Dayon said with certainty. "They learned their lesson. The whole galaxy learned their lesson. But at what cost?" Dayan touched the wall, running her fingers over the names. "These people died because someone thought humanity was weak. Because someone thought our kindness was something they could exploit. Their deaths bought us something precious, the knowledge that will never be underestimated again." She turned to Borum. "I hate what we had to do. I hate that we killed thousands of people. But I would do it again if I had to, because the alternative was allowing our entire species to be threatened. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be so terrifying in war that no one wants to find out what you're capable of." "Is that who we are now?" Borum asked. "The species everyone fears?" "We're the species everyone respects," Dayan corrected. "Fear is just the price we pay for that respect. It's not the future we wanted, but it's better than the alternative." Across the galaxy, warning buoys marked the edges of human space in every major language. The message was simple and direct. Humanity wishes to coexist peacefully with all species. We will honor treaties, respect sovereignty, and conduct ourselves with honor. But be advised, we have dropped the Courtesy Act. Any attack on human ships, colonies, or citizens will be met with immediate and unlimited retaliation. We will not warn you. We will not hold back. Choose wisely. The buoys were never attacked. The message was clear enough. And in the decades that followed, as humanity expanded further into the galaxy, they carried with them a reputation that served as both shield and sword. They were the species that had been pushed too far and had responded with overwhelming force. They were the guardians who protected the weak and punished the aggressive. They were the civilization that had shown the galaxy what happened when you mistook restraint for weakness. They were humanity. And the galaxy had learned to respect that.